Um, what are you watching at home? You have favorite things you've been streaming? I mean, we couldn't get enough of Tiger King on Netflix. I don't know if you watched that.
Oh, Tiger King! I don't
know. We need to watch that. Everyone was talking about Tiger King.
Yeah.
Joe Exotic. Oh yeah, it's quite
deciding whether they watch this or Tiger King, and many people were choosing Tiger King. I don't know. But hey, we've been watching our favorite shows come back, which is Babylon Berlin.
Oh,
yeah.
I lived in Berlin for a while, and so I love seeing that city.
Well done, so
and
well written.
I have no idea what the show's actually about, but it's great to watch and listen to in original German.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, all things considered.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, what are you watching? What are you reading? How are you passing the time?
Well, I just finished Tiger King on Netflix.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful. It's a limited series, so it's maybe like I don't know, seven episodes.
Yeah, I was going to recommend it to you if you hadn't seen it already. It's my kind of thing. It's so weird.
It's so weird, and it's so Florida, and yet it's not really set in Florida, but there are Tampa, Florida aspects of it. I'll keep that to myself because some of the people in it are extraordinarily litigious. But but I will say that
say that 3 times.
I know. I will say that Joe Exotic is amazing, and I've got to come up with some sort of character based on that because a gay gun-toting redneck with 200 tigers is pretty spectacular.
Oh man, the thing is that everybody is total nut job in that film, and I mean, Carol Baskin. I think she means well, but she comes off as pretty weird.
Right.
I got to tell you, I just read tonight that they've contracted to make a film out of that story already with what's her name from SNL?
Kate McKinnon.
Kate McKinnon playing Carol.
She'll be brilliant. She will be.
They're talking to David Spade, who's no stranger to wearing a mullet, to play Joe Exotic.
Exotic. Oh, how funny. Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's one of those documentaries that I will treasure always, truthfully. There's another one I love called Paris is Burning. And what happens is when I first saw that movie, I was caught up with the characters and all the different people in it. And there's a lot of humor and there's a lot of slang and stuff that we even still use to this day, like that looked fierce and all that, all that kind of stuff. But then the more you watch it, the more you start to see how sad their lives were and how impoverished they were. And truthfully, I have been kind of going back to some of the Tiger King, and I feel really terrible for those animals, truthfully. Even though they're all so interesting and the characters are so vivid and everything, the animals, I think, are the biggest victims in that. I
absolutely
really believe that. And it really breaks my heart to see some of the conditions that they were in, But
there was, so many examples of how do these people get away with this stuff? And to them, it's just normal. And I'm not going to go off on a big rant on animal rights or guns or anything, but my goodness.
It was crazy. Yeah.
It was definitely crazy.
But everybody's watching it. It's like #1 on Netflix, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And in his prison cell, Joe Exotic is probably patting himself on the back.
In a way,
look, I got high ratings.
Yeah, he's the
celebrity. Can you do a voice already? Can you do a Joe?
I'm working on it, but I do like the way, he's got that little, it's a little bit higher up here. And
right.
It's just great. And
I can see you doing that.
I'm going to try to do it. I mean, I'm much more built like the elephant that man was riding in on, not Joe.
Oh, what's his name? Doc Antle. Doc Antle.
It's fascinating. So that has kept me very
interested. You're a hat fella. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's all right. You look good.
Listen, what I was going to say, since we're all in our own sort of isolation here, figuring out what the hell happened. I was one of those who was fortunate enough to see the people downstairs at American Stage, which there was only a cast of 4, and you are one of the 4. There were 2 previews before it got shut down. I happened to see one of them. It's a wonderful show, and I did an interview with Natalie about it the next morning, actually. Were you really looking forward to that one?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for me, I've always thought that the script was exceptional, and I'm very good friends with Natalie, and she, she wrote the part for me, which is not something I brag of. I'm not bragging about that. It's extraordinarily humbling to have someone do that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do the best I possibly could with it. I really enjoyed the cast members, 3 people I had just met during the process. It's always great to work at American Stage. I've been actually working at American Stage in St. Petersburg since 2004. I had to think about that for a second and count the days. But so it was a great opportunity to do something that, and to play a role that I don't normally get to play in many ways. He was the romantic lead, and very, very unconventional.
Yes, but, right.
But
people will see it eventually, and they can see it for themselves.
That's right.
In December, is that the plan now? That it will?
September in the fall.
September. Okay. What? That must be like, you know, a lot of us, our jobs changed, our lives obviously changed.
Sure.
But to have a creative thing that you've worked so long on, and to get it that close to where you actually had an audience twice, that must be especially, you know, upsetting. Like, nobody's going to get to see all this work I put into it. It's gone till September.
And I especially felt that for Natalie Simons, the playwright, because he's really been living with this for a long time, this play.
Yeah.
And the opportunity to have a play that I don't want to call her an unknown playwright, because I don't believe that's the case, but, you know, a playwright that hasn't really quite found national prominence. I think it's around the corner, but she really was having an opportunity for her play to be produced by a professional regional theater company. Buffalo Kings, which she had written many years past, was done at Free Fall Theater. So these opportunities for a playwright to have their work done in a full-scale production, you don't see that often. So yes, I was very sad. You know, I was sad for the actors, and I was sad for the company itself, for American Stage, and I was really, really heartbroken for Natalie.
In boxes, and so they've got this big cabinet there, and the woman who was showing me around opened the cabinet, and there were like 40 or 50 panther pelts in there, all hanging up. It was like looking in Cruella DeVille's coat closet, and yeah, the panther paws, they were like,
oh my God,
you know, like that much, like that over my hand. I mean,
how long did it take you to write that book? I mean, that must have been really an immersive thing. I know the things that I've written, it consumes me for you know, a good amount of time. How long did Cattail take to write? I mean, I know you had that long period of like, I'm waiting for the right moment.
Yeah. Well, I would say about a year, because I was able to take some of the stuff I had written and just sort of adapt for the paper and just sort of adapt it into the book.
Yeah.
And in particular, I did a big series in 2010, which my editor at the time jokingly called Dead Cat Walking, where I kind of looked at what had happened with the panther and how they had saved it, and yet at the same time they weren't saving panther habitat. So as a result, we've got more panthers than ever before, but squeezed into a smaller space than ever before. Yeah. So I'd done an awful lot of interviews for that series, so I already had a lot of that research available.
Right.
And the first thing I always do when I do one of these books is I build a timeline, so I know sort of what order things happen in, and I'd already done that as well. So that saved time also.
Yeah. You made your name, as it were, as an environmental reporter. Not as it were, you did. I wonder how that, and there's probably a very simple explanation for this, but I wonder how that led to becoming, you know, a chronicler of, you know, Florida Man and the weirdness that goes on here. I mean, because you kind of, for a period there, this is the guy to go to when you want these stories, you know, strange but true things about our state. How did that transition for you? Was it gradual, or was it, I'm doing this now?
Well, it was sort of simultaneous. While I was covering environmental issues, and even before that, when I was covering criminal courts, which is my previous beat, I would see weird things going on and just make a note of it. And there used to back when it was the St. Petersburg Times, we used to do this annual rundown called the Sour Orange Awards. It was started by Tom French, a Pulitzer winner, and Tom Zucco, one of the funniest guys I've ever met.
I remember Zucco too, sure.
Where it was supposed to be the Florida version of Esquire's Dubious Achievement Awards. And so Tom French left to do something else, and Tom Zucco asked me, hey, can you help me out with this? And I said, sure. So I started saving these stories all year long. And then at the end of the year, we would create this page Sour Orange Awards thing. Well, that went away as the paper shrank.
Yeah.
And but in the meantime, Twitter came along, so I started tweeting those things, tweeting those stories. And an editor for Slate, a woman named Laura Helmuth, she had gone to college down here in Florida, and she started becoming a fan of those things that I was tweeting, and I would always tweet them as "Oh, Florida." And so when the Zimmerman trial came up in 2013, she contacted me and said, "How would you like to blog about Florida for Slate for the month that this trial is going to be going on?" And I checked with my bosses, and they said that's fine. So I said, "Sure." Of course, Florida being Florida, I had way more to talk about than than I could handle in just a month. But that sort of then became the basis for the book, "Oh, Florida." And an agent in New York contacted me after that series ran and said, "We're thinking that 2016, since it's a presidential election year, would be a really good year to put out a book about Florida." And so that's sort of how that got started, and eventually led to
There it is.
Florida.
There it is.
Which they sort of schooled me in how to write a book proposal, and then we sent it out to 15 publishers who said no, we don't think people want to read a book about Florida, and then one that said yes, and then it became a New York Times bestseller. So there's your Cinderella story. There's your happy.
There you go.
Yeah. Cinderella story, kid out of nowhere.
I want to ask you about the Times, because I reckon that pretty much everybody's watching this kind of knows that you and 11 other people kind of got the hook, as it were, after 30 years. Just a couple of weeks ago, really. I think that
March 18th.
They made a statement that it was kind of pre-coronavirus. It was just feeling the pinch. It was a cut. I have to ask you, how you doing? How do you feel about that's 30 years of your life?
Yeah, well, it was a 4-minute phone call, and it ended a 30-year career at Florida's largest paper. But I'm okay with it. I had a really good run. I loved working with the people I worked with, and they're still my friends. And I contend that covering environmental issues for Florida's largest paper is the greatest beat in American journalism. Because number one, they have to pay you to ride around on a boat now and again. But number two, because I got to cover some of that wild, crazy stuff, like, alligators battling pythons in the Everglades, and taxpayers footing the bill for captive breeding of endangered rats at the Lowry Park Zoo. And somebody had to watch them, somebody had to watch the rats breeding. So if you ever feel like you've been given a bad job, just think, well, at least I'm not having to watch rats breeding.
Yeah, well, things go on the way they are. I might be doing that soon. I don't know.
Well, there you go.
And I hope we can talk about it a little bit, that Eugenie made a film here not so long ago, end of last year, I think it was, with Harry Connick Jr. and Katherine Heigl. It was called "I See a Man with Yellow Eyes."
I saw a man with yellow eyes, and that title is now changed to Fear of Rain.
Fear of Rain. What can you tell us about it? It's fascinating to me. It's a psychological thriller. This is all I know.
That's what it is. It is a psychological thriller, and we get in the head of our protagonist, who's played really magically by Madison Eisman. And she is just marvelous and wonderful to work with. So is Harry Connick Jr. I gotta say, big crush on the guy. Bigger crush on my husband.
There you go. You had a major role in this, though. I mean, I went on IMDb, and you're like, fifth or sixth down.
Yeah.
Top.
And
it's Laurence Olivier, Humphrey Bogart, Katharine Hepburn, and you.
That's right. They wanted a man for her role, and they liked her so much they switched the role from a male to a female.
It's post-production. You know when it's coming out?
I don't know. I'm supposed to be hearing word any day now, because I was just asked for my bio from the producer. So they're
good sign.
Finalize things with whatever that might be. So I think it's very exciting. From what I heard, the information that I heard is supposed to be wonderful and thrilling, and I'm excited for them. A really great gal, Castile Landon, wrote and directed it. She's terrific. She is originally from Bradenton. Also, I just want to point out the fact that this film that has all these great stars was filmed in the Tampa Bay area. It was filmed in St.
Yeah.
Petersburg. It was filmed in Tampa. And it was a collaboration between the two film commissioners to support this production company. And the same production company came back and filmed a film just a few weeks ago. My partner in crime, Andy Matheny, gal with whom I teach, is in it.
Oh, yeah.
So,
And they raised the money locally
Yeah.
with support from the local film commission, not the
Yeah.
state.
we have a really great film community here, great actors here, great support system.
In the past couple of months, I have really been considering, or I was considering really taking a step back from a lot of this. I mean, I have my full-time job at Free Fall, and that's a lot. But I was really thinking of performing less and not doing as much drag and not doing, kind of clearing my schedule in a way, because I was there's no way around it. I was feeling tired. And it's interesting to think that will probably not be able to happen, because now that there are no engagements, that does put a significant financial burden on myself. Plus, working at any arts organization right now, the best case scenario is that we get open sooner than it looks like, because these places can't continue on indefinitely without programming.
The variables here are obviously very frightening. I think that, if all of us can hang on, it is key, as you were saying, again, that the arts can come back and come back strong. You once something you just mentioned, you once referred to yourself as a clown in a gown, which I just thought was hysterical. And so I started thinking, okay, well, the world needs a clown. The world needs a clown in a gown. Okay, maybe I don't know. You're the James Brown of St. Petersburg theater. You're the hardest working man in theater, right?
Oh, wow. James Brown is just amazing. I mean, what I think about with him, is that
you can dance like him. I've seen you do it.
Oh my gosh, totally.
Mike, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yes, I've been very fortunate, but also I have to let a lot of people know that one of the things about being in this area, there is an art scene in this area, but you really have to hustle to put together enough jobs to create enough income for you to be able to live, and pay all of your bills. And, that was so interesting in your article about Jeremy Douglas and others. Jeremy is another guy who hustles like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, amazing.
Talented guy. And he's been seeing, I just can't even imagine what he's going through. Scott Daniel is another one who, he does wigs and hair for shows. And he depends on performances happening. So there are people there that he can wig and make look beautiful. I mean,
is that a verb? Wig? I'm going to wig you.
Or what do they call them? Hair systems? I don't know. I think they call them units sometimes too, this unit when he sells wigs. But Scott depended on all that, and to see all of these gigs, it's been very hard on him too. And for a lot of people who try as hard as they can to make performing their, and I use this for musicians and actors and drag queens and comedians. I mean, they depend on a room to work with. And yes, everyone's coming up with new and interesting ways to digitally entertain people.
Yeah.
Even Free Fall, and I know American Stage has discussed this and others about some sort of digital content. That's all a great idea, but ultimately it's nothing like a live theater experience. It loses something in that transfer. So the sooner we can all get back on stage, the better. That's why people staying home is so important, because we can stop it if we do that.
How are you guys passing the time? What are you doing in your splendid isolation?
Well, I'm pulling together the manuscript for the state you're in.
You got time.
Yeah, and I
you're in a state of isolation. That's the state you're in.
There you go. And I wrote a freelance magazine piece for Flamingo magazine, which is the statewide culture and history magazine for Florida, about female python hunters. So that'll be in their summer issue. They're fascinating. They are absolutely fascinating.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to stop you there. Did you go down there and work with somebody and watch them doing that?
Well, I did last fall. I went down last fall with these two women from St. Petersburg. They run a dog grooming salon 3 days a week, hair of the dog.
I think I read that story.
Yes, and then
you didn't find any pythons at all, right?
We didn't find any pythons when we were out there, and I expressed some disappointment about that. And they said, "Oh, you want to see a python? The box behind your seat, there's one in there." And they opened the box, and inside this white cotton bag, there was an 8-foot python. It had been back there the whole time I've been sitting in the car.
I did read that. I did read that story. That was great. Yeah. So you're catching up on things. So I in addition to them, the story, I also interviewed a bunch of the other women that hunt pythons. There's about 13 or 14 women out there hunting pythons. One of them has actually caught more pythons than anybody else, male or female. She's a 61-year-old art teacher, but she grew up in the Everglades. And so, she's really familiar with the terrain they're really good at, I said, they're camouflaged really well, but they're really good at hiding.
Yes, they're basically hide and seek champions because they're ambush hunters. They're camouflaged and they know how to stay very, very still until their prey comes within range, and then they strike. But I said, what's your trick for catching all these pythons? She said the trick is show up, because she lives about 30 miles from where you start seeing pythons. She's out there just about every night, looking for pythons. That's how she catches them. There was a woman, she's been on I think 60 Minutes. She's actually experimented with cooking python eggs. She says soft-boiled is the best way to go. And her daughter took
only
some of
you can find these people. You know that
python eggs and made cookies with them for. Well, like the python hunter said, you just go looking. If you're the one looking, you'll find them.
Oh man,
there was one woman who had actually last year she moved down here from Indiana because she wanted to be a python hunter. She said, I was going out looking for snakes on my own in Indiana, and then I heard they'd pay you to do that in Florida, so I moved to Florida.
That's very, very Florida.
They're fascinating.
It attracts those people.
Characters.
Would you like to?
Yeah, I think Florida does attract those people.
Can you read something for us? You feel like that? I know you do a lot of readings, and I did ask him in advance, and he said he would. We didn't. I'm not embarrassed. I'm not putting him on the spot here. I hope.
No, you're not bringing it on.
So,
yeah.
Here's Craig Pittman.
Okay, so what I was going to read is the opening of Cattail. So this is from the prologue, which is titled "Cat Under Glass." The panther ran as fast as it could. The dogs gave chase, plowing through the underbrush, howling with delight. This was what they were bred to do, to sniff out and chase down big cats like this one. Their master, the tall man in the cowboy hat, would be pleased. The female panther they pursued was a scrawny thing, seriously underweight. It wasn't strong enough to keep the chase going long. Finally, it leaped into a tree trunk and clawed its way up onto a branch, then stopped to look down. The dogs circled the trunk, panting, their eyes trained on their quarry up above. Then the cat heard more noises approaching, a group of humans, all but one of the men. One of the men climbed partway up the tree with a gun, then raised it and fired. The cat flinched. The dart hit it in the leg, and everything went dark. Then the cat was falling. When it hit the ground, it didn't move again. One of the men, and then the lone woman, bent over it. They put their lips on the panther's hairy mouth, blowing their breath into its lungs, trying to revive it with mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. They were too late. So that's the opening.
I have to buy this book now.
Yes, you should. Several. You should buy several copies.
Yes,
give them to friends.
Can I tell you about my books too? You actually
sure. Skyway is great. Your Skyway book is fantastic.
Thank you.
I love
you actually, one of the blurbs on the back is from you, and we hadn't met before that, and so thanks for that.
Sure.
So Cattail is out now. The full title is Cattail, the Wild Weird Battle to Save the Florida Panther. And the other book with weird in the title is Oh, Florida, How America's Weirdest State Influences the Rest of the Country. They're both by Craig Pittman. You can get them, I'm sure, at Tombolo. You can get them, I'm sure, at Haslam's.
Yep.
And probably, I know you can get them on Amazon and the usual stuff too. Go shop local. Go to your local bookstores.
Well, if you shop local, I haven't been lately, of course, but I swing by Tombolo and Haslam's on a regular basis and sign the books that they have in stock. So you're much more likely to get a signed copy that way.
Absolutely. Well, Craig, can't thank you enough for taking time out to
My
visit
pleasure.
with us. And yeah, we wish you continued success. And I hope we see you again on here one of these days. And I hope we don't have to keep doing this forever. All things considered, I hope I see you out in the real world.
We got a song ready.
I think you're sitting at a piano there. Oh my God. I didn't even notice this.
Look,
Totally accidental.
Piano, see?
Well, guys, entertain us. Hey,
Do a
it's
short-
Catalyst Sessions.
Not a whole song, because I think one camera shot is kind of boring for a whole song. So we'll do about half a song right here.
Well, I'll bark and clap my hands,
Yeah,
and it'll
I'd say
you know.
enough.
Cool.
This is actually the reason I like the song is because it's a good description of what our life is like right now. If you don't worry about, a pandemic crawling in your door, if you're just hanging out, with somebody you love, it's like that.
Yeah.
How's that sound, Bill?
Sounds sweet, man. Very nice.
Let's do the odds. On a Sunday afternoon, really couldn't get away too soon. Can't imagine anything is better. World is ours, we never get together. Ain't no place I'd like to be except on a crowded avenue. Really, anything we like to do. So lots of things to see. We can't be anyone we like to be. Oh, those happy people we could meet just just grooving. Plus arms.
Couple of rascals, you guys. Couple of
Oh,
rascals.
Gotta love that.